Welcome, everybody. I am Larissa Vigu-Picard. I'm director of Pejepscot History Center, and we welcome you today to this volunteer info session. We're super excited to begin welcoming volunteers back and welcoming new volunteers to our fun and energetic group here at PHC, Pejepscot History Center. With me today is Amy Keithan. She can wave there, so you know who she is, and she is our museum services manager. And also we have our intern, Morgan Day, who is with us in a special location, which you'll find out about in a little bit. We have a couple presenters, 4 presenters today, in addition to the 2 of us, and I'll introduce them when the time comes. We have a pretty tight agenda. We have a lot of things to cover. We're going to try to give you as much information as possible about volunteering here at the Pejepscot History Center. And the veteran or returning volunteers certainly have heard a lot of this, so I will apologize to them that they're going to hear some of what they have heard in the past or already know. But we will try to keep things going right along so that nobody gets bored. And we will do our best to end right at 1 p.m. So I am now going to mute everybody. And again, at the end, you can certainly turn that off to ask a question after you have raised your hand. So if you haven't already put your name in the chat box and what you are interested in volunteering in or what you already volunteer doing at PHC, please do that. I'm going to start off with a very basic history of Pejepscot History Center, which used to be called Pejepscot Historical Society. We changed the name in 2020 formally. And we have been around, however, since 1888. We are the 4th oldest history collecting organization in the state of Maine, after Maine Historical Society, the Saco Museum, and Bangor Historical Society. So for many decades, we were actually one of the few historical societies in this region of Maine, and for quite a few miles, except for, south in Portland. We ended up with many, many items that people deposited here that might have gone to a different local historical society had it existed at the time. So over the years, including just today, because I just put together an envelope for Bodenham Historical, we routinely have sent items that we have found either that were never accessioned or that were accessioned but actually belonged somewhere else to those local historical societies. So we were the collecting organization for miles around for many, many years. Until the early 1980s, we were a 1-building operation, and originally on School Street, which is right around the corner from where our headquarters is now, School Street in Brunswick. If you're familiar with the Tontine Mall, that side street. We were in, from the 1890s until the 1970s, in a former church building there, and which is now occupied by the Theater Project. In the 1970s, the organization purchased a building on Lincoln Street because the collections had really grown and we'd outgrown the space in the building on School Street. And expected to be in that building on Lincoln Street for quite some time, except that in 1982, the Schofield Whittier House was donated to the organization. The Schofield Whittier House is on Park Row. It's a large brick Italianate Victorian. It is a duplex. It was built that way for 2 brothers of the Schofield shipbuilding family. We were gifted the Schofield Whittier side, and then a year later, we're able to purchase the other part of the duplex, which had become long gone out of the family line and become a private residence. And so we moved our collections, our local history collections, our offices, and exhibits into that side. So that's still our headquarters, 159 Park Row. The Schofield Whittier House is 161 Park Row. And we have basically that corner block of Park Row and Green Street. In 1983, we saved the Joshua Chamberlain Museum from being razed and potentially becoming a Burger King. Yes, that's right. Burger King was interested in that lot. Can you imagine driving through to get your Whopper on the corner of Main and Potter Street? Phew, we purchased that for $75,000 and set about raising the funds to restore the museum, and have put in many, many hundreds of thousands of dollars since then, including more than $100,000 in the past 2 years that we have raised and spent on restoring the exterior of that property. So, we have owned these two properties. We call it 3 buildings, 3 museums, even though one property is a duplex, since the early 1980s. And that really changed the face of the organization quite drastically. We have served 3 towns, Brunswick, Topsham, and Harpswell, since 1888, and we'll continue to serve those 3 towns. And of course, Topsham and Harpswell also have their own historical societies, which function very differently. We all get along really well together and often do collaborative things together. We have more than 50,000 items in the local history collection in our database. We have many thousands more items that are not cataloged from the local history collection and slowly are added to the actual database. And then tens of thousands of items in the Schofield Whittier House alone, which was given to us with all of its contents intact. And of course, the items that are in the Chamberlain Museum. We currently do a variety of year-round programming in addition to tours in the house museums. We do regular scheduled tours from May to October. And since last year, when we started doing only private tours, when we could not do regularly scheduled tours, we have been doing private tours year round. We will continue to do that. We've seen several requests come in just lately for tours for April, which is the start of the pickup of the season. That's a good sign that I think we're going to get some good visitors this season. I think people are eager to get out. We will be running a regular schedule, and that will be important to those of you who might be interested in being a docent. We'll talk more about that in a bit. We offer research services year round, and that means that people can come in or do research long distance. We'll help you, we'll do it for you, or you can come in and review items that we pull out of the archives for you. We mount exhibitions in our headquarters at Park Row, and we've just restored our beautiful front exhibition room. We do walking tours in the summer, and we'll eventually be expanding those walking tours to do 3 seasons. At least that's my hope. And then we do a series of year-round programs. And of course, they've all been on Zoom over the past year, but we will return eventually to on-site and keep some online programming as well, which has been very successful for us. Those are some of the kinds of things we offer. And we'll get more into those when we talk about different types of volunteer roles. Briefly, we are funded in a variety of different ways. We have membership. We run an annual fund campaign. We run special campaigns for certain types of capital work. We've done one for the past couple of years for the Chamberlain Museum. We're now doing a garden campaign and a raise the roof campaign here at Park Row, because we need to raise the money to redo the roof, which is happening this summer. it is in quite dire need of being reshingled. We do have a couple of rental properties, believe it or not, 2 small lots that we've owned for many decades and that we make a bit of money on monthly. We make money, of course, from admissions, from tours and programs. And we do make some of our revenue from research services, selling digital images and that sort of thing. Of course, a major type of support comes from volunteers. This organization would not have existed without volunteers in the town. 16 people, 16 men, 16 white guys back in 1888 that did create the organization initially. But for decades, the organization existed solely because volunteers were willing to put in the time and effort. We started having paid staff in the 1980s, but prior to that, it was all volunteer. And even after, of course, we began having paid staff, volunteers have been absolutely crucial, whether it's working on buildings and grounds maintenance, whether it's helping with the collections or putting up an exhibit, whether it's giving tours in the house, whether it's serving on committees in the board. We would not be able to do what we do without the power of volunteers. And that's what we're here to talk about today. We try to thank volunteers as much as we can because it's just amazing what we're able to do with the dedication and commitment that you all bring. We do hope volunteers, in addition to helping out with many things here, have some fun. We like to try to make it a interesting and engaging place to be and have fun conversations. And it's pretty laid back here. I think everybody, for the most part, will agree to that. We are welcoming back volunteers. We have been welcoming back volunteers gradually. Our longest serving volunteer, Dick Thompson, is our volunteer registrar, and he has been with us for more than almost 25 years. He started out as a docent. He still comes in 3 days a week here to work on items in the collection, putting items in the database. And he's definitely the poster person for volunteering. He did come back in late January and has his own space here in the museum. We've welcomed a couple of other folks back very gradually, and we have a lot of separate spaces for people to work in. I'm running into my own time here, which was supposed to end at 12:15. So I'm going to be very quick to pass this along in a minute to Amy. I will just say that with respect to COVID, when volunteers, we're still masked here in the office if we are not in our own offices or in our own chairs or what have you. And that will be the case for the time being until the CDC tells us otherwise. We definitely have separate workspaces for people. And for the most part, people for, at least the next few months will be working on individual projects. So you can be assured that we're keeping physical distancing and masking guidelines and so forth in place. And we will only relax those when we know that it's safe to do so. There are many benefits to volunteering. We essentially, volunteers can do research, any research they would like for free. They can access the archives and collections. They can go on house tours for free and bring someone else along if they like. We'll provide you with our print newsletter. You'll get a 20% discount off in our 2 museum shops. And this year we are going to have volunteer t-shirts for the first time, which we're excited about. Design yet to be discovered, I guess. We also do an annual field trip, or try to do an annual field trip, and also have an annual volunteer celebration. So the field trip we'd be looking at doing in the spring. We probably thus will not do a traditional field trip this calendar year, but we will be planning something next spring. We may be able to do some interesting professional development via Zoom, perhaps, for volunteers this fall, however. And we will do some kind of volunteer celebration this fall outdoors. And we look forward to always doing that, so we can really festively thank everybody. The time commitment is really role dependent. You're going to learn about the roles in a minute, and Amy can probably say a little bit more about how much time you might be spending in each. And the training is also role dependent. Of course, if you're a docent and you're learning a house tour, that requires taking 3 tours with other guides, studying the manual that we provide to you, which is fairly extensive, and doing shadow tours before you can give your own tours. If you're an office volunteer, pretty much you can start right off and come in and we'll give you instructions on whatever the project is. Buildings and grounds will require a tour of the grounds and meeting with our current buildings and grounds chair. Same thing with the garden committee. Our garden committee chair is here today, and so forth. So there's really a variety of types of roles, variety of time commitment, and a variety of training. With that, having gone over my time, I'm going to pass it along to Amy to talk about the different volunteer roles.
Thanks, Larissa. So basically we have, I would say 4 general types of roles available here. And within each of them, there's a multitude of tasks. And we truly try to fit you with the task that you want to do and that you'll enjoy doing, because yes, we need things done, but we really like it when we're all having a good time here. That's the bottom line. So the types of roles include office work, and a lot of people just like to get away from their everyday life and like to have something sort of mindless that they can do, be part of the sort of vibe around here. And this can be, you know, anything from putting together mailings, to filing, to data entry, to organizing the office. And one of the benefits of this type of project is that you are constantly getting information about the collections and the projects that we're doing and the people that we work with, just by doing those things, just by participating in those things. And generally, as Larissa said, that's something that you can come in and start to do right away. So there's not a lot of training involved with that. And as far as time commitment goes, usually people work about 2 hours a week minimum. They'll come in for a 1 or even 1 hour or 2 hour shift when it works for them. But you're certainly welcome to come in more. And sometimes if we have mailings that we need to get out, people want to come in and put in a little bit of extra time, and we welcome that as well. Another type of volunteer role that we have is working with the collections. This is actually an opportunity to learn about archives and collections and artifacts and the historic items that we have in our collections, but it's also an opportunity to learn some skills if that's something that you're interested in doing. And this can be anything from, doing some inventory of our collections to checking item locations, doing maybe reorganizing some of the collection storage, or digitizing and scanning. That's something that we're trying to do a lot more of. And it's very, very helpful to have volunteers work on those types of projects. But then we're also constantly doing projects with the collections. Just to give you an example, we've got a couple of projects going on right now involving removing items from a particular location and rehousing them at a different location on the campus. And we also have another very special project that's going on that you'll hear from Morgan later about. And all of these just kind of, they use lots of different skill sets, but they get you involved in the collections. And of course, this also means you get to work with items from lots of different time periods, which can be kind of fun if you're just a history buff. Another especially pertinent at the moment type of volunteer role is buildings and grounds. And this also includes, as Larissa mentioned, the garden restoration project that we have going now and probably for the next year or so. We'll be hearing from Gary Masnek, who is really spearheading and making an amazing job of this project. So you'll hear a bit more detail about that. But in general, buildings and grounds tasks can go anywhere from landscape maintenance to holiday decorating, a bit of painting here and there, planting and weeding. We have one volunteer who goes around and records the climate readings in all of the buildings. We periodically get together and have a team or a couple of people do some dusting and light cleaning in the house museums, assisting with exhibition prep. Again, big variety of things that you can do within the buildings and grounds. And within each of those, you can choose which ones you're interested in and which ones you're not. And I will say with this one, it's a time commitment weekly. It's very helpful, but a lot of these tasks are also quite project dependent. So holiday decorating, for example, is something that you don't need to commit to every week, but it's really helpful if you can come in around the holidays and help out with that. One of the things that I'll go back and mention really quickly is training for collections. And I just wanted to mention that if you are in a project that's working with collections, you will get a tour of the collections along with some basic sort of guidelines about how to properly deal with those. And then if you're doing a project that is more involved with collections, you'll also get some training on proper care and maintenance and best practice of working with historic items. And then Larissa also mentioned docents. This is something that, if at all possible, requires a commitment throughout the season, which this year starts on May 29th. We will be having a set schedule, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, and we run 4 tours per day of both houses. And then we also offer private tours on Wednesday, Sunday, and Monday. And so those can be extremely rewarding positions, but they do require a bit more commitment and a bit more training, but very rewarding. And then lastly, I wanted to mention that a lot of our committees are made up of volunteers. So if you are someone who does volunteer here for a while and becomes part of the organization and really wants to get into it deeper, wants to have a bit more of a say in how the organization is run and how the projects in your particular roles are organized, you're more than welcome to have a chat with us about working on one of the committees. With that, I think I'm going to, we have 4 people that I'm going to introduce really quickly. And they're going to talk to you a little bit more. They all have direct experience of being a volunteer here. Just to give you an overview really quickly, we're first going to hear from Nancy Fouché. Nancy has been involved in numerous and various types of volunteer roles here. Whenever we need anything, we can call up Nancy and she'll pop in and help us out. She's also a member of multiple committees and is on the board. So she'll be talking about the general experience of being a volunteer here. We're then going to hear from Gary Masnek, who is very, very involved in buildings and grounds, and as I mentioned, has spearheaded the garden restoration project. So he'll be talking about that and what kinds of roles he envisions people doing. for this new volunteer season. We'll also be hearing from John McKean, who is a docent. I should also mention Gary and John are both on the board as well. John McKean is a docent at Schofield Whittier House, and I had the pleasure of having a tour with him the other day. So he can give you a bit more information about what that's like. And then lastly, we'll be hearing from Morgan Day. Morgan is an intern at USM, and she's here with us from the Putting History to Work internship program, and she's been heading up a project in the South Attic at Schofield Whittier. So she's been working really closely with the collections and can give you an idea about what that is and what kinds of projects volunteers work on in collections. I will, before I hand it over to them, I'll just mention that if you have any questions as we go along, feel free to put them in the chat box, and then we're going to have a Q&A fairly shortly. So I'm going to hand it over to Nancy now.
Hi, everyone. So my role as volunteer began when I was probably Morgan's age as a senior at Bowdoin, when I landed an internship during the summer, which continued into the fall, and I did everything from leading tours over at the Schofield Whittier House to cataloging items for the collection. So that was great. Got me hooked into loving historic preservation and having a passion that's lasted a lifetime. Fast forward 28 years after raising 4 kids and other various jobs along the way, I found myself with a little more time, and I got involved with PHC, starting with the program committee, which is, you don't have to be a board member to be involved. I started just as a volunteer, and the program committee does all the planning for special events and regular events that happen, from Untold Stories, which is a program run typically for school children in the afternoons once a month, to planning special events like the Christmas party or the Santa Day garden party, which is yet to happen. So that's been really fun. I got excited about the different opportunities to be a part of the planning and just putting my hands to work wherever needed. I've enjoyed really working with a wide variety of people in the community and getting to know people. It's been a really amazing experience. And I joined the board about a year ago. And since becoming a board member, I've also joined the development committee and the strategic planning committee. So those are official board positions. And starting last spring, I volunteered with Gary and a crew of other hard workers to work on the garden restoration project, which has been ongoing and has also been a lot of fun. It was great, especially with the pandemic, to be able to get outside and actually be a little bit social at a distance and meet other people who are passionate about the organization. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Or pass it along.
I think we'll pass it on to Gary, and then people can have a think and ask questions in a bit.
Thank you, Amy. Gary Masonic. I started with PHC 7 years ago, I think, when I retired back to Maine. I began as a docent at the Chamberlain House. I'm still doing that. For those who are thinking about it, it's tremendously rewarding being a docent. Don't feel intimidated. You get a lot of support, and it's something that I think you'll really enjoy. I've been asked to speak about the buildings and grounds and the garden committee, but Amy and Nancy have taken a little bit of the wind out of my sails here. Oh, by the way, I just got elected to the board myself. Buildings and grounds, there's a lot of facility that we have to maintain. A lot of the work we have professionals do, but as Amy told you, there are a lot of tasks that volunteers need to attend to. They're seasonal, some of them are projects. We just had a couple of volunteers reside a little alcove build extension off the back of the Schofield Whittier building. And then there's my pet project, the restoration of the garden. Out back of Schofield Whittier is a roughly rectangular sunken garden that had become very overgrown, gone to weed. And 2 years ago, when I was moving into a condo and was afraid I wouldn't have a garden to work on anymore, I thought of starting up this effort. Uh, we have a design from a professional historic garden designer. And last summer, we rolled up our sleeves and got down to the nitty gritty. Last year was a lot of infrastructure. We had to put in a French drain and dry well. We had some trees removed and stumps ground. We did a lot of weeding and getting plants we wanted to salvage relocated to storage. And we built a brick patio. This year, we need to finish the walk of the patio to the stairs. We need to do some more drain work. Unfortunately, the adjacent parking lot drains into the garden, so we're trying to deal with that. And then we'll get down to the more fun part of conditioning the beds themselves and planting. My challenge then, once we get that done, is to get a group of people who will help maintain the garden so that somebody else isn't restoring it in another 30 years. So as Nancy said, it was a really good thing to do the summer of COVID. We got to be outside, we were able to distance and still be in a social environment and accomplishing something worthwhile. So love to have you aboard. Time commitments or whatever you'd like to do. We last summer had 2 sessions scheduled a week, about 2-3 hours. You can come and go as you please. There are always tasks to be done. So hope to see some of you out in the garden with me. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. I think we're all looking forward to the garden project this summer, actually being able to be outside. So yeah, hopefully we'll have some interest in that. Next, we're going to hear from John McKean, who is a board member as well as a docent, amongst other things. So take it away, John.
Thank you, Amy, and welcome everybody. I see a lot of familiar faces, but a lot of new faces, and look forward to meeting folks, and appreciate your interest in being a volunteer for the Pejepscot History Center. So first of all, I have always been a history buff, and so I joined the Historical Society, then now History Center, as a member, so I could get their newsletter and I could get their emails about events. I started attending a few events, a few lectures and things like that. And then in 2016, I came to an event like this, although it was in person, to find out how I could become a volunteer and do more for the organization. And I decided to become a docent for the Schofield Whittier House. This has already been said, but I'd repeat it for anybody who's interested. You are given a very extensive guide for the house. You certainly do not have to memorize the guide. You pull from each room the items that you want to talk about or are comfortable with. You absolutely will be able to tour with 3 other, you'll go on 3 separate tours with various docents to see how they walk through the house and talk about it. There's a tremendous amount of support that comes from the staff, from Larissa, from Amy. And I love being a docent for the Schofield Whittier House. It's an incredibly interesting property. There's a lot of different ways you can describe it and walk through it and talk about it. But if you do like to talk to people, if you like to meet people, it is a great way to volunteer. I mean, I've met a woman that worked at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. I've met a couple that own a medieval castle in Scotland. You're certainly meeting people from all over the country, and then you're meeting people from Freeport. So a lot of people are in Maine for a family wedding and they want to come to the house. Or there are people that have lived down the street from the Schofield Whittier House and have never come in for a tour. But I certainly encourage, it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of support, and particularly if you don't mind speaking in public and you enjoy meeting people. And like I said, I think it's usually at least a couple of hours. They want to schedule, they would want to get you on a schedule to commit for a couple of hours to handle tours that come into the house. I would certainly encourage it, and happy to take questions at the end if anybody has anything particularly like to speak to me about. But thank you all. Hope you'll consider being a volunteer, and welcome.
Thanks, John. The last person that we're going to hear from is Morgan. Morgan is going to be talking about a special collections project, but I did just want to mention that we have many just regular collections projects that involve the archives here on the PHC side of the property. So if being in a dusty attic isn't your thing, but you want to work with collections, we certainly can accommodate that as well. But go ahead, Morgan.
Alrighty, well, I love being in a dusty attic. So if anyone would love to join me, I would appreciate that. As Amy introduced me, I am Morgan Day. I'm a senior at USM, part of the Putting History to Work grant. My area of expertise is in archaeology, art history, and collections management. My position here at PHC consists of managing the Schofield Whittier South Attic project, which, as you can see, I'm zooming live from the attic. I'll be heading to Boston University in the fall for historic preservation, concentrating in archaeology, but I will be continuing this project throughout the summer and hopefully fall as well. This project is very hands-on and very exciting as well. I found a bunch of cool objects, such as this solid brass Bausch and Lomb microscope that is part of a photomicrography camera. That was a mouthful, but it's super exciting. There are independent projects here, so if you would like to come up here alone and kind of explore this area by yourself, that's totally encouraged. However, if you would like some supervision, I am always here to guide volunteers to certain projects that they have interest in. We have artifact cleaning, attic organization and cleaning, taking notes on artifact attributes, sorting historical documents from Isabel's travels and Alice's medical career. For example, we have a Life magazine that we found from 1940, January 1st. And also researching objects like the photomicrography camera. That took us a significant amount of time to research to identify the object and find some cool, fun facts about it. And if you're a computer person, we also have data entry to enter into the database for archives purposes. So that is the project in a very short summary. Thanks,
Morgan. So I think you can all see that there's a lot of scope for work there. I'm going to now hand it over to Larissa, who's going to sort of monitor questions. So if you have questions, if you could either use the hand icon, the raise hand icon, or the chat box, we would love to hear from you. What do you want to learn about? What do you want to hear about? What didn't we cover? So I'll let Larissa monitor that.
Hello again. Thank you to our guest presenters today. They really all concisely packaged some of these great opportunities that we have here. We have some other really wonderful longtime or veteran or current, however you want to say it, volunteers that are on the call too, some other docents, some Chamberlain docents and Schofield docents. So there are other folks, if they have anything and would like to weigh in, we invite that. We're happy to take any sorts of questions about specific tasks or about any of the things that we talked about. I kind of ran through all of those sort of benefits and time commitment and training and all of that fairly quickly. So if there are any questions, we're happy to, or comments, questions or comments, happy to take them. Okay, Janet Roberts, you can go ahead and unmute.
What sort of time commitment for Morgan's attic?
Morgan's attic. I'm going to let Amy weigh in on that.
Yeah, Morgan herself comes in all days on Mondays and half of the day on Thursday. So if you want to work specifically under Morgan, we can set you up to come in on one of those days. However much time you want to. If you want to come in for an hour, that's fine. If you want to come in and sort of get a scope of a feel of the project, and then decide, that's up to you. If you wanted to come in, a couple times a week. If you want to come in on days that Morgan isn't here, that's also fine, because I've been working with Morgan she's doing the work. Let's get that clear. She's doing the work, but I've been overseeing the work so that I at least know what's going on and helping out where I can. So that's entirely up to you. We'll work around your schedule.
I just want to pop on and make a quick comment. I am still a full-time student taking 6 classes as well as having 3 internships. So those 2 days are limited for now, but throughout the summer, according to different plans, I will definitely be here more often as long as they let me in. But yeah, so if you really want to work together, I would love that. And we can always exchange emails or phone numbers and get together and tackle the project together.
Thank you.
It really is a treasure trove up there. And there's much yet to be discovered, because the room that Morgan is in is essentially one of 2 attic rooms and is the only room that has really been gone through so far. The room way in the back is full of piles of boxes, leaning towers of Pisa, and trunks that are way under the rafters. And we have no idea what are in those things. And so it's really an exciting project. And in terms of timeline, we don't have a specific end date to totally finish the whole thing. I would say it would be nice to get the 2 rooms fully organized by the end of the year for sure, and certainly working on the cataloging of those items. But there's lots of archival material up there, so it is going to take a long time for some of the actual cataloging work. That'll definitely go beyond this calendar year. I think I might have seen another hand, but I see a question in the chat box that says, when do you anticipate the volunteer season will start? So we are definitely welcoming volunteers back now that want to work in the office or in collections, if we've just been talking about. So if that's something you're interested in, we can begin scheduling at your convenience, and as we have slots where we can maintain good physical distance and that sort of thing. In terms of buildings and grounds, I would say now as well. A lot of that work is outdoors, certainly the garden's outdoors, and that committee is going to really ramp up quite quickly. One of the things, I don't remember, Gary, if you mentioned, but there will be a fence that will be built this summer. And we definitely need some help with that if you're interested in that kind of thing. And that will start off fairly quickly, if not, hopefully this month, but if not, early May. And then the docent season is different. So we are running private tours right now, but we have folks that are doing those. The scheduled days, the Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, are beginning Memorial Day weekend, that Saturday. So the schedule would start then, and we run through the end of October. We do ask that folks who sign up on the schedule try to commit for the season for a time slot. But we do also have folks that do sections of the season. I know that we have one gap to fill at the Chamberlain Museum. We definitely have at least one gap to fill to completely fill out the schedule. And then we would certainly be able to add other folks here and there to double up. At Schofield, we definitely need new folks. We definitely need new folks at Schofield. I'm not sure I can say that strongly enough. I'm going to say, John Ott, did you have a hand up at one point?
Larissa, yes. I was just curious, can you talk a little bit about the library and archives and materials that might deal with that type of material within the collection?
Do you mean the volunteer roles that might deal with the archives
Exactly.
specifically?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and Amy can jump in here too. I mean, we have had volunteers do everything from inventories. We've had lots of different types of inventories done, to rehousing collections, to fixing errors in the database, going up to the archives and pulling out a box and a folder, and fixing the data that's in the database because for whatever reason it's incorrect, to doing some research. We get research requests quite frequently. And in fact, we just tallied it up. We've had, just since the start of the year, 27 different researchers, which is quite incredible, really, for for the winter and for an unusual year that we're still in. So you might be asked to do a little research or invited to do that if you're interested in that. It's really a wide variety of things, whether you're working in the archives, which would mean the paper material in our collection, or our object collection. And that might be on the third floor here on the office and collection side, up with textiles or hats and shoes or uniforms and that kind of thing, or objects that are in our basement right now, or framed artwork. So, or our photo collection that's on the second floor here. You might be scanning photographs for a special project or an exhibit. So there's really a wide variety.
I did want to mention a kind of fun project that we do have someone working on right now that also gives you an idea of the variety. We currently have a box of letters that came in as part of a large collection from the Pine Springs Beverage Company. And these letters were written to Bernice Holbrook during World War II from a number of different gentlemen. Some relatives, some not. And just as part of making those more accessible in the database, we're having one of our volunteers read through those letters and pick out relevant search terms that we can then put input into the database to help researchers. So that's kind of an example of kind of a fun project that you get to be hands-on with the archival items and kind of really get into them.
I was going to mention that you have a rich newspaper collection up in the attic, which is really quite a handful to handle. I mean, they're literally huge, but it's such a rich repository of information about all of the towns that you represent that surveyed the way it should be. And that's something that could be done for all kinds of research projects.
John, are you referring to the Schofield attic over there? Or are you referring to our collection here on this side?
Yeah, on this side, but I know you
Okay.
have one that hasn't even been touched on the other side.
We do.
But
We
the
do
collection you
have.
right there with you.
Yes, we have many ledgers of newspapers, pretty much the full run of the Brunswick Telegraph and the Record. Those actually have been digitized by Curtis Memorial Library and are searchable online, which is wonderful now, but it is also incredible to page through old newspapers. And we do have researchers that routinely do that. They are, and sometimes volunteers who are doing that for researchers or for an exhibit that we're doing. They are slowly disintegrating, and they desperately need to be rehoused. They're actually right above me in the room up there, and that is something that we need to raise some money to buy the shelving for, to get rehoused. But yes, we do have an incredible newspaper collection.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? I don't see anything new in the chat box other than Marie. Thank you so much for taking some slots for the 2 house museums. Some of our docents actually do both houses, and Marie Pangborn, who's on the call right now, is one of them. And she does tours at both during the summer. So that's pretty incredible. But we do have Steve Garrett is another one, and Susan Smith would be another one. So we do have three docents who do both, which is exciting. Yes, Randy. We can't hear you. There you go.
Because I was muted. If we wanted to volunteer in one of these particular areas, what's the next step for that?
Well, funny you should ask, because that's the segue to the last part of the agenda. And so I will go ahead and turn it over to Amy to go over that. And again, thank everybody for being here. Amy.
Wonderful. We're just about on time, which is great. I am going to right now pop a document into the chat box. You don't have to download it at the moment if you don't want to, but if you want to get a head start, that should take just a minute. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to send an email follow-up to all of you. It's going to include this form that I've just put in the chat box. If you are interested in continuing to be a volunteer here, or continuing to figure out whether or not you want to volunteer here, go ahead and fill out this form. All of the volunteers need to fill out this form so that we have their information, etc. And then basically, if you are a docent, we'll need to send you the training manual. We'll need to set up training for you quite soon. So we'll contact you about that as soon as we get this volunteer info form back. If you're interested in buildings and grounds, we're going to want to set up a tour of the buildings and grounds for you so that you can learn a little bit more about that in person. And then if you're interested in offense and collections, then I'm going to want to set up a time for you to come in here and meet all of us, and or start right away if you want to jump right in. So that's the direct next step. Fill out this volunteer info form. It's going to give us everything we need to then follow up with you. But I will say that if you have any questions at all, feel free to give me a call. And put my email address here in the chat box as well. But you're welcome to call or email. And if you have any other questions, we can take them on a case-by-case basis. And then there was one more thing. Can't remember. Oh, lastly, we are going to be posting a recording of this session. So if you want to go over anything we talked about, that'll be available to you online as well. So that's it, unless we have any other questions.
Good job.
And I'll just finally say that, you know, in other years, we have done this as an open house and had food, and we've often then gone and given tours or quick tours in the house museums and so forth. And that's not the year that we have before us. So it's a little bit of a different platform, but it works really great for the information part of things. And then when you come on site, whether you're going to be a docent or whether you're going to work in the garden or work up in the attic with Morgan, we'll give you the tour that we would have given you, and go over anything else that you want in person, as Amy mentioned. So thanks again, everybody. And I hope that we will see you soon for the 2021 season at Penjobscot History Center. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Good job.
Thank you.